One of the great achievements of the Nixon opening to China was the Shanghai Communique, in which we recognized that we have different socioeconomic systems, we have different ideologies, but we have some interests in common. And so we should look for common ground and reserve the differences we can't solve now for later resolution. So we worked out a series of compromises, which were difficult for both sides, but they laid the basis of a cooperative relationship. I don't believe our current policies toward China serve our national interests. I think the emphasis on competition is not so much about competition as it is about hamstringing China's progress or retarding China's advance, maybe even pushing it back, which I think is doomed to fail. That will never happen. I think we should focus instead on improving our own competitive ability. Rivalry is constructive. If you have a race and you train and you try to outdo the other people in the race, you improve yourself. And that is good for you. If you think that you should run a race by tripping people or hamstringing them or bringing them down, that does nothing for you. So I think we have approached China in the wrong way. China is returning to wealth and power. For most of history, it was the largest, probably the best governed, scientifically and technologically the most advanced society on the planet. It is returning to that state. That is good. We should try to take advantage of China's prosperity to enhance our own. We should find ways to leverage Chinese strengths to supplement our own, but that's not what we're doing. So I do have grave differences with my government's policy over the last 15 years or so. I think China's appeal is that it delivers progress and higher living standards for the Chinese people. And one of the appeals of China is that it accepts other countries as they are and does not insist that they change to become more like China in order to deal with China. This is very much like the United States in earlier years, but we have changed, unfortunately, to be more insistent on imposing our system. China's appeal is that it seems to have found a new way to combine market forces with guided industrial policy. And that industrial policy is now being copied by the United States, which is interesting. We actually had industrial policies that were very successful. In recent years, the ideology of the country has shifted and rejected this idea. Mr. Biden put it back, not very effectively, in my view. I think there's a lot we could learn from China in this area. Deng Xiaoping said, I think this is correct. Feel the stones to cross the river with your feet, and don't try to tell people how to get to the other side. Dividing the world between great power rivalries or insisting that history is determined by a contest between democracy and autocracy makes any sense at all. I think that is an American domestic political argument that really doesn't work very well. Every country has ideological values and constraints. I think actually what is happening in the world is a very different thing than what we projected. The world is becoming multi-nodal. A node, Jiedian, can connect many things in different directions and different volumes in different times. And it's three-dimensional, it can turn. And so this is the world we're getting into, in which middle-ranking powers have a renewed freedom to act, freedom of maneuver, that they didn't have when we were in the bipolar order of the world, of the Cold War. In the Cold War, it was a sort of a feudal system. everybody had an overlord. If you were trying to stay in between the two superpowers, you still defined yourself in terms of your relationship to each of them or both of them. This is gone. Now, many countries which are middle-ranking powers, I think of countries like Turkey or Japan or Saudi Arabia or Korea, Indonesia, for example, India. I think these countries don't want to be aligned with anyone else. They want to make their own decisions. They want to follow their own interests. And they now have the ability to do that because the world is becoming multi-nodal. We will have differentiated relations. I would like my country to return to its constitutional roots, which were not hegemonic, and to accept that we are one country among many others, not the supreme power in the world. During the post-Cold War period, the United States felt omnipotent, omniscient, and felt that it could act unilaterally. So we ceased to listen to people. We began to lecture them. We began to insist that they follow our lead rather than trying to understand their interests as they see them. And the result was essentially a diplomacy-free foreign policy, including a lack of substantial dialogue with China. So I think one of the things that we need to do is rediscover diplomacy. And what is diplomacy about? It is about listening to the other side, understanding why the other side has the views it does. This is something that current Chinese diplomacy seems to do fairly well. I think you are blessed with a very strong diplomatic service. So I think it is we on the United States side who need to rediscover humility, modesty, listening, and arguments directed at persuading the other side rather than resorting immediately to coercive measures like sanctions or the use of force.